علشان بكره ما عندناش وقت، ان ما فيش امكانيه هنتكلم عن بابا كيرلس، فالنهارده هو اليوم المناسب عشان. So tomorrow it's the Sunday, and Sunday has to be focused on the gospel. So we have no time to talk about Pope Kyrillus tomorrow. The same Pope Kyrillus will be tonight in English. So as we study actually the book, A Silent Patriarch, which I recommend it to everybody. So we come across many things that's very remarkable about Pope Kyrillus, of course. It's very important to understand the principle is live with a saint, you become a saint. To hear about a saint, there is a hope to become a saint. So one statement that keeps ringing in my mind, said by a philosopher from England. He's a Catholic philosopher. His name is G.K. Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton said, a generation is converted. A generation is converted by the saint that contradicts it the most. What does that mean? A generation of people can be converted by a saint who will oppose it the most. بالعربي الجيل بيتغير بالقديس اللي عكسه أكتر حاجة. يعني يقف ضده. الناس كلها ماشية في اتجاه والقديس ده ماشي فين؟ في اتجاه المعاكس. Let us look at this for 5-10 minutes. Look at how Saint Pope Kyrillus actually stood against a whole generation and became a saint and converted the church. In the book, A Silent Patriarch, the first half of the book, almost the 3/4 of the book, talks about the darkness the church was in. The church was not like this at all. It went to a very bad place, very bad place. You cannot imagine how bad the church went until you read the details of what happened. We heard about it growing up, but I never imagined it would be to that details. Very, very bad. So how did Pope Kyrillus contradict his generation and even today? What would he contradict? First, from his youth. From his youth. He loved solitude when everybody else wanted to socialize. You might say he's an introvert, maybe, but he was very reluctant to spend time in vain talking. Very reluctant. He would always go to his room and spend more time doing his thing. What's his thing that he did while he was in the world? What special prayer? Agbeya and Tasbeha. That's it. That's what he used to do every day, what he had done all his life since before he was a teenager even. He would go to his room, open his Agbeya, read, and then later he was actually introduced to a saint, Saint Isaac of Nineveh, Saint Isaac the Syrian, who, listen, this is his, I have one of the class when we were asking, how did Saint Isaac the Syrian influenced Pope Kyrillus? And one of the very holy, very simple girls said in her writing, answering the question, he used to read his book to him every night. But Isaac the Syrian had died in the 7th century. So Pope Kyrillus was disciplined by Isaac the Syrian, although he is for 1300 years earlier. So he learned from the saint. What did Isaac the Syrian do? You might not know this story. We grew up actually reading his books and knowing about him because of Pope Kyrillus. Isaac the Syrian was a bishop of Nineveh. كان أسقف في العراق. إسحاق السورياني. مارس إسحاق السورياني كان أسقف في العراق. ويقال في القصة, it's said that 2 brothers came to him debating over the inheritance. And one of them said to Isaac, the bishop, I want my share. So the bishop said, okay, the gospel says to be kind to one another. Let's divide it equally. The older one said, no, I'm not going to listen to the gospel. Isaac looked at him and said, so what am I doing here? So he left his seat, he left his bishopric, and went to the desert and went back to become monk. That's his mentor. ده الأستاذ بتاعه بتاع بابا كيرلس. لما شاف إن الدنيا مش ماشية حسب الإنجيل عمل إيه؟ ساب الأسقفية وراح الصحراء. What things that Saint Pope Kyrillus actually contradicts the word? First of all, his love of solitude. There is a chapter written in this book about the desert, a state of mind, a state of the mind. What do you do in the desert? What do you do in the desert? You pray, you practice purity, and you practice ascetics, fasting. And so wherever you are, if you're doing those three, the purity, the ascetics, the fasting, and the prayer, and especially the liturgy, you are in the desert. You don't have to be in the desert. So he was in the windmill, كان في الطاحونة, and he was in the church practicing what he would practice in the cave. There was no difference. It didn't make any difference for him. The other thing is that he was not going after what people went after. He was contradicting everybody. People went for whatever is pleasant, whatever is, prestigious, whatever is very high. We know about him that he ran from being a bishop. One time, البابا كيرلس لما كان ابونا من المتوحد والانبا يؤنس البطريرك اول واحد في حياته كان عايز يعمله اسقف، راح جري على فين؟ على دير الانبا شنودة رئيس المتوحدين واستخبى هناك، ما حدش عارف هو راح فين، لا كان في سيلفونز ولا في تليجرامز ولا اي حاجه، سنه في الاربعينات. فراح استخبى عشان ما يعملوش اسقف. ما كانش بيجري ورا الموضوع ده، بالعكس لما دوروا عليه ما لقاهوش والبابا اتضايق منه. So this is one thing. He was going against what everybody else in the church at the time and maybe today run for. We all run for the prestige, the power. What else he did? He was brave. Very brave. I will tell you this. He didn't really care much what happens to him, as long as he's not really doing something crazy. So he would stay in a windmill up on a mountain by himself. Usually they say this is the backwater of Cairo, the place where the thieves and the thugs and the criminals would live. At one point, someone went into his windmill and did what? They hurt him. They think he had something in his windmill. فكروا انه عنده كنز في الطاحونه، فخبطوه على دماغه وكانوا سايبينه ميت تقريبا. And he dragged himself down to the hospital في المبرة، بيسموها هرمل، المستشفى اسمها مستشفى هرمل. And he got treated there, and they said he suffered from a concussion, and he went back after he got treated to the windmill to continue his work. He had an exceptional trust in God. Exception. He always looked to God to support him. He never actually trusted anyone. In this case, he was alone by himself. He didn't have support. He didn't have support from the church. He didn't have support from the people. All the people that supported him, they did it for God out of feeling bad for him. But he, and many times, one occasion, they kicked him from the windmill because many people thought he's doing something very suspicious by himself up in the mountain. And then the British actually wanted him out of there because they had some operations in the back and they thought he's a spy. 2 times he got kicked of the windmill. And every time his disciples, who were very few disciples, said to him, "What are you going to do, Abuna?" He said, "God knows. He will take care of me. Don't worry about me." And for a long time, this is one of the contradictions. For a long time, Abuna Min al-Mutawahid was not in the monastery, and I'm going to tell you why. He was not in a place. He was a homeless beggar between 2 places, دير الملاك مخيل وكنيسة العذراء. بين الاثنين رايح جاي. He stayed there like this for years, until the people around him who knew him said, "Let us find him a place," and they found a piece of land that actually somebody bought, a very small piece of land, and they made it into St. Mina's church, where he came to be praying a liturgy, and then he started to be known. In the windmill, the book writer, they said, the windmill, مكان في الطاحونة, it is formative years for him. He was being formed as a saint. In the church of St. Mina, it was a formative years for the church. Now people came to him and wanted to be his disciples. The greatest names we know in the church today. أنبا شنودة البطريرك، شنودة الثالث، ابونا متى المسكين. They all gone through him. all learned from him. أنبا شنودة، أبونا متى المسكين، الأنبا صمويل، أبونا الأنبا بشوي، أبونا صليب سوريال، أبونا بولس. They were very much, they knew him and they were discipled under his hand. So in the book they say, he was the single person. That's why we think of him as a great saint, as responsible for the reformation of the Coptic Church. Without Pope Kyrlus and the grace that God used through him, no church that we know today could have existed. It was so sad and so dark. If you read the history, you will know. It reached to a point where there is what we call Simonism. In his time, in the last years, before he became a patriarch, there was Simonism. What's Simonism? The selling and the buying of God's gifts. The selling and buying of ranks in the church. كان في راجل اسمه ملك كان قاعد في البطريركية بتاعت الأنبا يوسف، آخر واحد اللي قبل البابا كيرلس، وكان بيدير شؤون البطريركية ويقول للبابا يرسم مين وما يرسمش مين. عشان حد يترسم راح لازم يديله تسعيرة 5000 جنيه مصري عشان يبقى أسقف. احنا بنضحك، الكلام ده صعب جدا جدا على أي حد يسمعه. وفي وقتها كان at the same time there was Habib Girgis and the movement of Sunday school, and there were a lot of enlightened youth who knew this is wrong. This is very wrong. Nobody can tolerate this. And they were talking, and then there's one of the things that you don't know, but I think we read in the book, that there's a letter sent from ابونا مينا, from Baba Kyrlus قبل ما يبقى البطرك, a letter sent to Pope Yusef saying to him this. Okay, Pope Yusef was not a monk. He was a metropolitan of Gerga at the time. And he pushed. He actually made all the political moves to become a patriarch to the degree that they prevented some people from voting. So Pope Yusef was not supposed to be a patriarch. And he knew this. There were actually two other patriarchs before him, Pope Macarius is the only one before him. And then before the Pope Macarius, Pope Cyril V. But Pope Macarius was a metropolitan, Pope Yusef was a metropolitan. Both of them regretted it big time. So he sent him and said, His Grace, His Eminence, Metropolitan Yusef of Gerga, and not the Patriarch of the See of St. Mark. Can you say that to the Patriarch? He's telling him, بيقول له أنت مطران مش بطرك. البابا كيرلس بيقول له كده في أبونا مينا. بيقول للبطرك أنت مش بطرك، أنت مطران جرجا. ومع ذلك بيديله الاحترام في الجواب، ويقول له إيه؟ يقول له من فضلك كما ترى أحوال الكنيسة نزلت لانحدار شديد جدا، والموضوع خرج من إيدينا وبي harm other people, we harming a lot of people. So please, and he's giving him suggestion. Or they choose 3 monks without blame. اختار 3 رهبان ما لهمش لوم، خليهم يختاروهم من الأديرة، ويعمل قرعة هيكلية and make an altar lot and pick one of the 3 to be your vicar. النائب البابوي يساعدك في إدارة الإيه؟ البطريركية. And after long life and peaceful life, when you leave, he should be the next patriarch. Who can say that? He is not a bishop. At the time he was a poor monk who has no power whatsoever. So you see here what contradicts the culture. His what we call detachment, تجرده. مش عايز حاجة من حد، ولا ناوي ياخد حاجة من حد. تجرد, detachment. Well, everybody else wants to have things, whether it is money, whether it's prestige, whether it's power, and people paid money to get the bishopric. He runs away from the bishopric. Second, his courage. While everybody is hush hush, he is going with the big cannons, but in respect. He didn't disrespect the patriarch. And it's surprising because you see that someone is like in his فحاله, in his own church, in his own thing, doing whatever he needs to do, going against everybody else's way of thinking. Surprisingly. His dedication to prayer. Whenever, okay, so let me just say this. Statistically, Pope Kyrillos had done what they think 35,000 liturgies in his life. That's the number. 35,000 liturgies. That means what? Actually more, maybe more. Because if you think about it, every day liturgy for 10 years, that's 3,000, actually more, yes. So you have 35, now maybe less. So it's actually from the time he was ordained a priest at age maybe 28 to the time that he died at age 60. So that number of years multiplied by days, that's the number of liturgies he had done every day. The way he actually committed to it. His commitment, fidelity to prayer is unmatched. This is number one in his life. And he would never go back on it, whether he's a monk, whether he is a bishop, whether he is and never been a bishop, whether he is a patriarch. Every day. When he could not stand anymore, they installed for him, this was a new invention, microphones and speaker in his cell. And he would hear the tasbihah and the liturgy as he was in his bed at the end of his time. He would go in the church, and actually what I did today is his tradition. I just intentionally did it. I put the cross over everybody's head, and he would ask everybody their name if they had not seen them today and give them something nice to hear. He was very holy, and for this reason is the extension of holiness of Pope Kyrillos inside of him. He was given miracles and exorcism. What else he had? He had no ايه تاني ضد الكالتشر. ما كانش عنده تعصب. بابا كيرلس ما كانش متعصب ابدا ولا كان وده I think it's also one of the teachings of Syrian, the Isaac the Syrian. اسحاق السورياني قال اهرب من الجدل العقيدي كهربك من الاسد، وبابا كيرلس كان بيعمل كده. لا اتخانق مع مسلمين ولا اتخانق مع بروتستانت ولا اتخانق مع كاثوليك ولا اتخانق مع اي حد بيجي له بيعامله كانه ايه؟ واحد. بيحبهم كلهم، بس طبعا مش كلهم هيديهم نفس الحاجه. وكان بيلاحظ جامد جدا يقول للانسان ايه؟ في الارشاد بتاعه الحكمه بتاعته ان كان يشوف الواحد فين وينميه في الحاجه اللي هو فيها. ما كانش يفرض عليه طريقه واحده. ما كانش عنده طريقه واحده. يشوف الواحد فين ويقول له ايه؟ مشي في السكه دي ويعمل كذا، يوم يتقدم في الحاجه. لو واحد في الخدمه يخدم اكتر، واحد كان بيساعدهم ان هم ينموا في الحاجه اللي هم بيحبوها. في طريقه الصلاه لما كان حد يجي له يطلب منه يساعده ازاي في الصلاه، يقول له بتصلي ايه؟ ويديله على قد الحاجه اللي بيصلي فيها. وكان عنده التمييز انه يشوف كل واحد وحده مختلف، ودي حاجه برضو احنا ما نعرفهاش، ما عندناش فكره عنها. كان مختلف في حاجات كتيره جدا عن الجيل بتاعه. He was very very different than the rest of the generation, and that's why everybody hated him and everybody loved him at the same time. They hated his way because it was strange, very strange. But they loved him when they came to know him personally. They just felt like he's a father to everybody. And for this reason, I think God gave him this place, and that's why we all have to know about him. And we owe him the church we have today. We definitely owe him this church. It's something that actually gives us, so the result of this is that we see that in his life, God gave him to accomplish a lot. He didn't run after anything. He did not run after anything. God gave him things to do. It's like a faithful steward. If you have a servant who does well, wouldn't you give him more? I would give him more. إذا الخادم اللي عندي بيعمل لي أو اللي بيشتغل معايا بيعمل الحاجة اللي أنا عايزها منه على أحسن وجه، ما تديلوش أكتر؟ هتديله أكتر. فربنا اداله أكتر وأكتر. لغاية الوقت إن وقت بيعمل معجزات مش بس مع المصريين أبط، معروف أكتر في العراق وفي سوريا وفي كل الدنيا. ناس أجانب بيعرف ما إحنا ما نعرفهمش يعرفوا البابا كيرلس. فأنا عايز أقول لكم بس إن هو البابا كيرلس ده مثال نبص عليه من الحاجات الجميلة في البابا كيرلس، إن قصته قريبة منا جدا. إحنا كل الناس اللي اتلمذوا عليه قال لك سمعنا عن الحاجات دي في الكتب، لكن لما عشنا معاه شفناها متعاشة. We heard about these things in the books, but when we come to see Pope Kyrillos, we saw it lived, fleshed out. And that's why he was very powerful. We ask his intercession on our behalf, and glory be to God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit.